they both said, I know all the facts, but I still don't want to call it a genocide, which surprises me because it's sort of, if you know all the facts, then what's there to, you know, if you still don't want to call it a genocide, then maybe you don't know all the facts, right?
Maybe. I do understand their positioning in a sense that they just don't want to use this, especially like Lonerbox, we talked about it, that he doesn't want to throw this word around, which, I mean, understandable. It's a strong word. So I agree that it shouldn't be thrown around.
That's a
But at
serious
the
crime.
same time, there is just like, it's a little bit questionable. Yeah, just how reluctant some people are to, even like friends of mine, to look into it. And I constantly catch them make claims that it sort of wasn't. But then when I call them, they're like, well, I'm just not sure, you know, I just don't know, like I just didn't do the research. Well, maybe then you should do it, and
Yeah.
then, you know, and then say publicly that it probably wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, or it's debated, or it's not accepted, or it's not a consensus, for example. Because phrases like that, they undermine the, you know, the validity of the claim that it is, right?
Yeah.
And if you throw that claim, at least either do not talk at all about it, which is fair, right? Or talk about it, but with the knowledge and with the, you know, with the research and things like that. And it's not that difficult, honestly. It's quite open now, the information about it, which it used to be different. Yeah,
I visited the museum.
Books at them if you want, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I visited the museum in Kyiv.
So it's a bit annoying.
Yeah, but the author of this book basically said, because I don't agree with Lonerbox a little bit, he said that the definition of genocide from Lemkin was changed, and it wasn't really changed. It was narrowed down, but the definition itself remains the same. It was just narrowed in scale. The author of this book basically says
that's
that,
what I brought up.
Yeah, the two big groups were cut out of the definition that Lemkin wanted to include: political groups and social groups. And interestingly enough, it was cut out of the definition because one big country demanded that it be cut out. It was the Soviet Union. And because the Soviet Union,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
hilarious.
Yeah, the Soviet Union was
I didn't know that.
Was one of the one of the biggest countries that demanded that it's narrowed by those groups. Because if it wasn't, then it would never even be a debate. There would be no way to debate it. It would just, the Holodomor would just be considered a genocide, period. And without those groups, you have to look at different elements to establish that it is. And you can establish that it is.
Yeah, very convenient. Very convenient for them. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, you don't have to appeal to just Lemkin, obviously, because there are plenty of other people you can appeal to. I personally am like very partial to the idea of not really debating whether the famine was intentional, because people get bogged down on that. There's a lot of like people who are like, you know what, the famine was like because of the industrialization, because of collectivization policies, because of this and that, right? But it's really, it just kind of like, in my opinion, it's used to kind of remove, you know, the attention from the matter, because the matter is not whether the famine was intentional or not. The genocide part comes how they handled it. How they used the famine, even if it wasn't intentional, to, under the guise of the famine, especially exterminate an ethnic population, and also do the replacement and Russification and all of that, right? So that's what matters, not whether the shitty policies of the Soviet Union intentionally led to starvation or not. It's how you handle the starvation as systematically as a government. That's what matters. So and there is no question there, in my opinion, whatsoever.
There is no. And people don't seem to, because there's a thing about genocide when people discuss it, is that people think that it has to be absolutely pre-planned in advance, that there has to be a long plan and preparation. And the reality is that genocides are often, they are emergent, if that makes sense. You have a set of circumstances, they happen, and the government decide, oh, okay, the circumstances are like this, so we will just now exterminate this group. It happened with the
Yeah.
German Empire in southwestern Africa when they tried to subjugate two peoples, the Herero and the Nama, and they didn't want to be subjugated. So they sort of started an uprising against the German Empire. So the German Empire decided, oh, if we cannot make them comply, we're just going to have to kill them, you know? And I see
Yeah.
Holodomor in the same way. It's like, oh, so I guess the collectivization was a huge disaster, and now we have the tools. We might as well use them to uh, make to deal with this group that's pretty inconvenient to us. Let's just say,
Yeah.
especially
And
since
I call it that like opportunistic. It's like opportunistic
yeah,
genocide sometimes. So
yeah,
some event happens, and under that event, you can actually pursue some sort of agenda.
yeah,
For example, in Ukraine, it's obviously there's a big resistance movements in Ukraine to Soviet Union still. Ukrainians were also the people who suffered the most because of the collectivization policies, due to the industrialization, due to us being farmers
yeah,
Раскулачивание, as they call it, or kurkuli, if you call it in Ukrainian, right? The peasantry class, essentially, right,
yeah,
in Ukraine. So there were a lot of like reasons for Ukraine to be quite, not happy, to say the least. Never mind the occupation
yeah,
of Soviet Union, of Ukraine, yeah. So all of that obviously was, yeah. And also, like I also bring it up multiple times, but people really don't talk about it. But actually, that policy, it kind of benefits Russia even now, because one of the main reasons why there are so many Russians in eastern Ukraine, right, especially in particular,
yeah,
from where I'm from, right, and southern Ukraine as well, is because so many people died and have been replaced by
yeah,
Russian population during that exact time. So all their claims, although obviously about the protecting Russian ethnic Russians or Russian speakers, they usually equalize those two things for some reason. So yeah, basically, right, their claims about that are partially due to the fact that Holodomor helped them to reduce the Ukrainian population, bring Russians here, and also Russify,
yeah.
right?
That
So
was the point.
change the culture essentially of the region.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
So
there's
the effects of that policy are still felt. That's what I
yeah.
mean. They're still used as well by Russia.
That there
Yeah.
was like a couple of elements there because collectivization was tried before, and when it was first tried, the peasants sort of just didn't like it, and they started leaving to Poland en masse, and or just pushing back against it. And there even on the border, there are sort of writings of border guards that were writing that people were coming over the border and asking, please invade, please do something about this, And there's Stalin had to stop the first round of collectivization at this point. There was the slogan of, oh, we are so drunk with success that we should stop for now. And then he implemented it again slower, sort of like boiling a frog in water. And then he sort of did the Holodomor. And there's an aspect to it that people
There
really...
was a little bit of a...
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sorry.
Oh, no.
Because of the lag, and I don't know where you ended or not.
No, because...
I apologize for that.
No, that's okay.
But yeah. Do you see my tree, though? It's there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Christmas tree?
See a little bit of it there?
I see the tree.
Yes, it's a bit early, but...
Yeah, I noticed it when...
I must enjoy my trees, okay?
I know this is on Piers Morgan even, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's, when you're like kind of bombed in shit, but you want to like a cutesy New Year's decorations. That's the vibe.
I mean, you sort of...
You look at the decoration and it feels a little bit better.
You feel better. Yeah. Like there was an element strong to finish up the Holodomor topic. Damn, I think my internet's breaking up a bit. But
on that,
yeah,
thing I actually was kind of find hilarious is the argumentation that people be like, well, it wasn't like obvious, and Stalin didn't actually say out loud that he wanted to exterminate Ukrainian
as
population
a nation, right?
And replace it, Russify it. Yes, and you're like, well, if we have to have like a written letter
Oh
from
yeah, true.
from a dictator, or like yeah, it's just what do you want, like him going to the
Yeah.
microphone being like exterminate them, like it's not a Marvel movie, obviously,
You
right?
you'll
And
you'll never get that
I brought up
after
Hitler.
yeah, after
Yeah,
World
I
War
brought up
Two.
Hitler as an example
Yeah.
of a man who was over the top with that, even by judging by other everyone else's standards. Although he didn't say for very few years that exterminate all the Jews.
Yeah.
By the way, he didn't say that out loud. But when he did start saying, being more open about it, obviously, when it was already clear that he can, get away with it. Essentially, he has enough power grip to do it without hiding anything. But they still were hiding it. For example, the concentration camps and everything that was happening. Never mind all of that, but also not everyone is Hitler.
Yeah.
So I think we can estimate that brother was exceptional and hinged when it comes to hatred to the Jewish people, for example, right? And not everyone is such a Kendrick Lamar level of hatred towards Drake, right? Level of
Plus,
of commitment.
plus,
jokes aside, yeah. So
plus during Hitler there was no genocide
that,
convention.
yeah,
so.
nobody, not everyone is.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, that was a silly argument though, because like not every single genocide is announced as by the people that they are going to do
you have
it.
to look
like
at actions.
One of the main reasons of announced literally.
Yeah,
you have to look at actions. What actions were taken? Like, and that's, to me, that's very confusing. Why they have to fucking announce it? Never mind the fact that it's not smart to announce it at all. Yeah, so
fact,
it's just if you want to do it, you do it. Hush.
We have examples of genocides that were prosecuted, and there were no direct announcement. We had to look at the evidence of the actions, but there's also an element that there's an element that's very overlooked about the Holodomor in particular, that mostly peasants were targeted, sort of, and a lot of Ukrainian people were peasants. And Stalin made a whole speech about how the peasant question is basically the national question. So you can see where this is going. The peasants are the soldiers of the national movement. Yeah, the peasants are basically.
What did he possibly mean by that?
Yeah, so basically by solving the peasant question, he
didn't say exterminate Ukrainians, though. So
yeah, he did say it was okay to do it in Ukraine, but not in Georgia. Like, what a Georgian patriot. How beautiful. And yeah.
It's just, to me, it's also kind of silly because, for example, people only think about, not to undermine like Holocaust in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, but it's not the only genocide. And again, I'm not like trying to undermine it in any way, but we also don't have to compare literally everything to it. And you're coughing.
Yeah, sorry. It's detrimental a bit because
it didn't go the right way.
It sort of goes.
Are you all right? You're not gonna die on street, I hope.
I hope it's gonna be okay, but it sort of goes the other way around. Almost, it's almost a lack of comparison to the Holocaust if you think about it, because it's like Holocaust is this special thing. And if all other things do not meet this criteria of this special event that is basically pretty big in scale, etc., then it's not really a genocide. When genocide is not even about scale, right? If there's a people that consists of 5 people and all 5 people are killed, it's still a genocide of those people, even if the group was extremely small. It's a weird example, but it is how that works.
Yeah, it's not a number game. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not about the number exactly. But I brought up that to Lonerbox, like the intentionality obviously is what matters quite a bit, right? And we have that. We have like the actions, the systematic aspect, the top-down aspect, like basically all of it is there, right? And the most like funny bit for me is that we also can't compare it exactly with like, and shouldn't, with like Holocaust stuff and Hitler stuff, because he don't really do it hush at all, because he was shipping Jews from all over the place.
Yeah.
to concentration camps. He wasn't exterminating the population within his own country.
Yeah.
That's a
In
little
fact,
bit, not that he didn't just take out Jews in Germany or in Austria, obviously, but he was shipping them to Poland, for example,
Yeah.
right, to the death camps.
But that's
In Ukraine, there were also like places where Jews were executed, right?
That's the really interesting part, but because before the Genocide Convention, and that was one of the main goals of Lemkin, that's why he really decided to do the whole Genocide Convention. Before that, it was understood that nations can just do with their citizens what they want. It was understood that, it's even on the back of this book, this quote. Before Lemkin, during the Holocaust, created the term genocide, the extermination of whole groups was treated within popular opinion among lawyers and rulers. It was considered a sovereign right of a state to do. And they compared it. A farmer has the right to exterminate their herd, and if you try to stop them, you're just intruding into their property. You know? That was treated as an international standard. That's why in the Nuremberg trials, no Germans were ever tried for killing Jewish people in Germany.
Yeah, that's what I meant exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say, because there's also was one of the reasons why nobody literally cared, and most people didn't even know. Even the researchers who later said that it was genocide, at the time there was no access to Soviet Union and to see what was going on there, right?
Yeah.
So there's also like a lot of that. It's much easier to hide both your intent and your actions within your own like borders, even if it's occupation.
Yeah.
Right, because Ukraine was occupied by Soviet Union time. But even if it is occupation, it is quite easy to do it within that land of your control, let's say, than it is to, yes, sure, like Hitler also took, Germany and Soviet Union both attacked Poland and occupied it, obviously, right? And all the death camps were under the control of Germany, obviously, right? But it's a whole ass operation, okay, of shipping people there. It wasn't like a more of a casual case, more of a it's like beyond any scale, essentially, right?
Yeah.
It's such an
industrialized
way
killing,
of exterminating people. So we shouldn't really compare like every fucking thing to it, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have way different genocide. You have the Rwanda genocide, which was basically just a bunch of people with machetes coming out and killing people, right? Chopping them to bits. And that's a genocide. Nobody questions that if Rwanda was just genocide or not.
Armenian one is also an example. Right?
The Armenian one was why Lemkin even decided to.
Armenian one was mostly concentrated.
Yeah. So I think we have.
Well, let's talk not about genocide.
Yeah, although
let's talk about something else. How about
topic.
your
the interviews?
Yeah, but there gotta be something else for us.
Yeah,
okay?
Saving children.
What about your work with the children? Okay?
It feels like I sort of found a topic that I'm really focusing on, and it's the Save Ukraine organization that helps to. I think you were the first person to suggest me the organization. Actually, you gave me their contact.
Maybe,
first. And
I think so. Yeah.
I had one interview with the press secretary. Then I returned, and by that time, that first press secretary stopped working there. And ever since, I've been in contact with a new one. I've done an interview with a child psychologist who works with the children after they are rescued, and a person that organizes rescue operations. And the third interview was with the right hand of the founder of the organization. That one had to be cut short because she was busy.
So.
And then finally, I interviewed a person that had to leave an occupied village near her son on the other side of the river. But there are situations in which, at least...
So you're like working for them?
Because this organization is really robust. They organize living space for people. There are whole hope and healing centers. Hope and Healing Centers, I think that's correct, the name. and they have
Yeah, I know. That's why I send them to you, because it's the only one that really does some sort of like bigger work, I suppose, on a bigger scale. There
yeah
are a couple of other orgs, I believe, but they're like less smaller essentially, which is doesn't mean they're bad or anything, but they're a little smaller scale. And yeah, I really wanted just to say that I super appreciate your like interest in this topic in general, but also like active effort to actually come around and do something about it, because it's something that really hurts essentially to see, and
yeah
especially the lack of, in my opinion, legacy media attention to it, and any media honestly attention to it, and it feels sometimes like literally nobody is bringing it up besides Ukrainians essentially. So I saw like actually Polish politicians bring it up a couple of times, if to be fair, but other than that, most people just seems to not really talk about such an obvious fucking
yeah
international like war crime, like atrocity that is yeah, it's just quite awful.
but it is one of the points in the
Yeah, so
genocide
thank you again.
convention.
Well,
Right. We're back.
mm,
We're back in the topic, but yeah,
we're back to genocide.
yeah. Basically, my grandfather from my father's side was kidnapped by the Nazis as a child. It's a bit of a complicated story.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he was taken to a camp with great grandfather, and it's a bit complicated because a German family adopted him, and that ended up saving him from the concentration camp. So he actually liked the German family that sort of took him in. So that was a bit of a complicated case.
I mean, understandable, obviously, yeah, because Yeah.
But yeah, it's like you hear the stories about the children, some of them are pretty, well, let's just say the spectrum when it comes to how extreme the stories are. From the first press secretary, I heard that story of a 6-year-old boy whose father was taken to the basement, and then he would return to the boy beaten up. When he would be outside, he'd have to pass a bunch of corpses of soldiers each time to get to different places. And when he was finally rescued, he would not speak for months. He would wet the bed, etc. And even the milder quote unquote stories involve people, because there are cases of Ukrainian children being born in Russia, for example, right? There's a father who's in Russia with the child, and the father died, and the mom wanted to come from Ukraine to take care of the funeral and to be with her child, but she wasn't allowed. She was just stopped at the border, and the child was just given away to adoption. It was very strange. And then also they did
There's
manage
also active effort to rename them sometimes.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, sorry, it's lagging, so I don't know your name.
No, I'm saying that's
Yeah,
actually
the
pretty.
renaming of them, like basically
Yeah.
erasing their like connection to Ukraine, their family, and everything. It's pretty fucking horrible.
Yeah, it's renaming.
And yeah, they also like sort of brag about it, which very very rational. It annoys the fuck out of me. It's just quite difficult. I actually have a story which is a little bit similar about the brainwashing of children, which is not abduction exactly, but it's my like personal story. I don't know if I told you, but I had like this family who we allowed to live in our house, in our apartment, basically for almost a year. And they were a pretty nice family from Donbass who escaped during Russian initial invasion in 2014.
Right.
So they have stayed with us like for quite some time. We like got really, kind of attached to them, like they're like another family of ours essentially, right? And one of there was like all elderly gent, his wife, their daughter, and the daughter's little son. So so me and my sister would like kind of like played with this kid, we spent time with him and with the family sometime, and we were very close relationship essentially. And then his mom made a decision, questionable one, but but it is what it is. So returned with her son to occupied Donbass.
Oh.
So the grandparents stayed, and then they wanted to move to Israel actually because they're Jews and they have been, invited essentially because their son lived there. But that's a whole other story. They ended up returning to Donbass specifically because they didn't want to leave their daughter and their grandchild. And she made this decision for all sorts of stupid reasons, which we are not going to discuss. But the point is that he started going to school there, right, as a kid. And he started to. It's been like a couple of years, not even like a decade or some shit. He didn't grow up there. He has been like 10, I think, when he arrived here.
Yeah.
And then he's been, I think, 13 or something like that when that call with him happened. And his grandmother suggested they come here and visit us to Kharkiv.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what he said to her? He said that he will not go here because we are evil banderites.
Yeah.
And Nazis.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like...
And we kill people in Donbass. Yeah, so he knew us. He spent time with us. So we're not even random people, right? So his grandmother basically started crying, and she was like, "What are you saying? Like the girls and the family, they're nice, they're kind. They gave us home, when Russia attacked." And he's like, "No, Russia didn't attack. It was evil banderites, evil Ukrainians who did it." And he just completely was brainwashed. And as a kid, obviously, it's easy to do, but it's just I was just absolutely shocked, and that was pretty awful.
That was
pretty
a big
awful experience.
This is a big part of the few interviews that I do with the psychologist. She told me that they do work with children that basically there's this the milder version, and it's weird to say, but children go to school and there's this, first of all, parents cannot really accompany children to school in occupied areas or in Russia. So they're just taken by a bus or some other vehicle and they're taken to school. And there's this sort of belief instilled in the children that whatever the teachers say is correct, right? And so there are situations in which the children are basically they're turned into spies of Russia because they go to school. The teacher says, "You know what? There's no electricity in Russia, or Ukraine never in Ukraine. There's no electricity. There's nothing there. Ukraine never existed." Stuff like that. And then the child returns home and is like, "Mom, I learned at school that Ukraine never existed." And the parents now have a choice. Will the parents say, "Yeah, that's not true. It does exist. It's a place." But then there's a real chance that the child will go back to school and say, "But my mom said that it exists." Well, you told me that it doesn't. My mom told me it does, and then and then secret services get involved, and it turns into a mess, which creates a lack of trust between parents and children. They become spies for that's
very, very Soviet energy, I must say. Very Soviet energy.
There was this case of a girl who was rescued. She even at first didn't want to come to Ukraine because she thought there was nothing there. And when she finally was rescued, she returned to Ukraine. She looked around, was like, "Why is there electricity here? I was told there's no electricity here. I was told there's nothing here."
Oh my God, that's so fucking awful.
Yeah, I know. It's like there's a lot of stories like that.
And also, they never mention obviously that they're the reason why so many places actually do not have electricity or the heat. Obviously, they never, they like this kid. He was basically saying that when he arrived here, right? He knew exactly who attacked him. He knew who destroyed their house. He knew everything about it. He called them Russians, and he called them thugs of local thugs, right? Who Russia paid money to militias that they, weaponized essentially, right? But he was brainwashed into thinking that it was actually Ukrainians who destroyed his house. Meanwhile, it's completely not true, and he even came to us because of that, and lived in our house because Russia came in and ruined essentially their lives, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was very. I mean, it was the first instance I encountered this, not the last, unfortunately, but the first time I ever really was like, oh my god, they're like actually like forcefully, like intensely brainwashing those
Oh
fucking
yeah.
kids into hating their own people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's really disturbing.
And there's
Yeah.
also the element of
Well.
militarization of the children, basically like just
Mhm.
putting pressure on them to join those paramilitary organizations. Like the biggest one is UNARMIA. You know about UNARMIA, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a big successful project in Russia, and it became an export product for their little satellite countries. And basically, in tech, in theory, you don't really have to join UNARMIA, but in practice, the kids get pressured, and there are situations in which a child is treated like crap. But after they join UNARMIA, suddenly their treatment becomes far, far better. And from a very young age, I heard that this is something that is across the board. There's no discrimination there. Both Ukrainian and Russian children receive this treatment. That you are taught from a very young age that dying is actually nothing bad. There's nothing wrong in dying.
Yeah.
It's all
Straight
great.
up fascist. Yeah. The death cult. Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
And
I also found, like, I grew up here, so I had, like, when I was a child, there was still this like cringe, fashy 9th of May celebrations in Ukraine as well, which all of that has been tossed out, thankfully. And but back when I was like, quite small, a child, there was this thing, and I was like looking at it always. I didn't know, like, as a child about like what's fascism or what's like death cult or what like militarism is, obviously. But I looked at it and I thought, like, fuck, like I didn't thought what the fuck as a child, but I thought it was like there's something like wrong about this. Like it just feels wrong, the celebration of like death, of dressing up children in soldiers as soldiers, giving them like guns and things like that, and sitting them on tanks, all of that. It just seemed wrong, and it also seemed wrong to me to celebrate the victory in the sense that it should be like a remembrance day, in a sense that it should be like solemn in a way, right?
Yeah.
Because of just how many people died, right? But it was never about that for Russians, and it still isn't in their rabid, like we call them победобесие, which is like victory fancy, I guess you could translate it in English. It's all about them being glorious and victorious. It's never about even like saving the world from like Nazism, of like nothing like that. It's all about victory and the glory of victory and death. So yeah, that's take that as you will, I suppose.
Yeah, and there's also this big tragedy that I feel like is not talked about in English speaking countries, about how, and it started with 2014 in the first interview that I had, that the kidnapping of children actually started before 2022. It started after 2014. And the big tragedy is that the kids from 2014 became adults in Donetsk, Luhansk, etc. And they were brainwashed enough that they saying that, no, we're no Ukrainians. We're from this independent zone. And it's a tragedy because they became basically Russian puppets, let's be honest, fighting against their own country. Yeah.
Not only that, there are also used now and will be used as literally like cannon fodder to fight against Ukraine. So, for example, like I had a friend of mine who is from Donbass. He's currently fighting in Ukrainian armed forces. Like, no, he's my best friend, I would say. Thankfully, still alive, as far as I know, at least.
Best friend, yeah.
It's been a while since we talked. Can you say it again?
Best friend?
Yeah, one of my best friends, definitely. Yeah, he moved from Donbass in 2014 fully and stayed in Kharkiv. I met him in the university, so in the same class essentially, right?
Yeah.
So his family, half of it, joined like his father was like a fucking alcoholic, typical like marginalized dude that
Yeah.
they used to recruit essentially for money and vodka, quote unquote. And unfortunate side of affairs is that his one of his friends had a little brother who was I believe 12 when in 2014. So
Yeah.
now he's has been caught as a prisoner of war by our
Yeah.
guys from the Russian side. So
Yeah.
that's one of the more tragic aspects as
Yes.
well. That not only these people are brainwashed to hate their own people and to kiss the feet of the people who destroyed their lives and their houses and their families and their neighbors, but they also are used against us
Yeah.
as essentially like meat puppets. It's absolute
Yeah.
horror, and I I do appreciate quite a bit that you spend time even bring attention to it as much as you can, because it's truly something that I find to be underreported horribly.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
like the press secretary that worked then in the organization phrased it. It's a very grim way, sort of. I mean, it made me feel sort of sad when she said, "Those poor boys don't even know what happened to them. They're in our prisons now, and
yeah,
they don't even realize what happened to them. Because they think
yeah,
that they're just it's happening still. It's like it's worth also remembering that it's happening still in the occupied areas, that people are forced to
yes,
take up the Russian passport, then drafted into the army and sent straight on Ukraine, and people don't really think about that part at all. It's
I
not
actually
really.
met a very cool dude in I think in which brigade was it? Fuck, I don't remember exactly, but it doesn't matter. It's one of the brigades I'm constantly helping as like volunteer work. So there was this guy who was like very cheerful, cool dude. He like came to us to just chat and thank us for the goodies we delivered, like drones and armor and things like that. And he told us that he was actually that guy who was sent who was captured in Donbass. He was then tortured, imprisoned, all sort of shit, until he agreed to become part of the Russian army, essentially. So they kind of like forced him to do it. But he then basically the first opportunity he had, he gave up to Ukrainian armed forces, and now
Yeah.
he's fighting against Russians in Ukrainian armed forces. Like absolutely crazy story. But
Yeah.
and he was like exceptionally happy for a dude who came through such a terrible, horrible experience.
Yeah.
But but he was. I asked him actually. I was like, well, weren't you? Do you know that you could have like potentially like get killed or died because getting giving themselves up as a prisoner of war doesn't always like obviously work exactly, or you could get shot by your own side or
Yeah.
the enemy side or whatever the fuck, things can go haywire, right? And he was like, I thought about it, but it was better than staying there either way.
Yeah. I mean, at
So
some
I
point you
decided,
have
yeah.
you try to.
So either die or try to get back to Ukraine and actually like serve in the
Yeah.
Ukrainian armed forces against all of that. So yeah, pretty glorious dude. Hope he's well. but yeah, stories like that you can find a lot of that. There was actually kind of like weird ass dude who was actually Russian from Russia who came to Ukraine to fight. But they tend to be like quite strange. Like at least it's my experience. And by quite strange, I mean they tend to be some sort of like very far right person, essentially, who comes to. I mean, they're anti-Putin, which is not bad in itself, obviously, right? But their motivation is sort of like strange, at least in my experience.
But in the
Yeah.
new interview that I had, there were a few stories which were, I said, yeah, they are very interesting stories, but I absolutely cannot use them anywhere because if God forbid any sort of Russians got wind of this or that happening, there'd be just be trouble,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you should be careful in that sense. Yeah, I'm sharing things that I know is okay to share, obviously.
Yeah.
So there are plenty of things I cannot say, obviously, because it will endanger the soldiers.
Yeah.
Some people have their families stuck in occupation, something to keep in
Exactly,
mind.
something like the lady. The lady herself asked me to like censor her face and maybe even change the voice because she still has relatives, and she's worried about that. But she told me a few stories that I even told her straight up in the interview. Yeah, it is an interesting story, and I'm recording it, but I'm not going to use it. Because
Yeah,
it was
many
just.
things like that.
But mm, there's like I guess one thing I can say with no problem that won't endanger anything. That there's this practice of Russian soldiers on the outskirts of cities dressing up as Ukrainian soldiers, pretending to be Ukrainian soldiers, and shelling the cities that they occupy to sort of make the villagers feel or think that the Ukrainians are shelling them.
Yeah, yeah. That I even interviewed one person who described that exactly that. But that old guy was actually smart enough to understand it was a farce, and he also was not only smart enough to do it, he also had a good ear for accents, which is something that Russians really kind of have trouble understanding. It seems that Ukrainians can really clock very well, even those who speak Russian. So, for example, I grew up speaking Russian, obviously,
Yeah.
right? And all my family does, and all of that. But I can clock a person from Russia speaking Russian easy. Like it's like absolutely no problem. I can just tell by ear that that person is not ethnic Russian living in Ukraine or like a Russian speaking Ukrainian, but they're actually from Russia. So that was actually something funny enough that happened a lot during Maidan, because they have been shipping people from Belgorod, which is Russian city that shells my poor Kharkiv quite a bit, and they would bring people from there to be anti-Maidan, so to speak, so to be like an opposition to Maidan protesters in Kharkiv, and they would pretend to be Kharkiv citizens, but you can like hear it like a second, and you hear it, you fucking Russian,
Like,
yeah, it's just, and then we would make fun of them by asking them, for example, what is this like big street, for example, there's like this street called Sumska in Kharkiv, which is like the major city center. Everyone knows that. So there's like not a single person in Kharkiv who doesn't know that street.
Yeah.
And they would, think very hard and then say Lenin or Marx or some
Oh
shit.
my
Like
God.
try to, because it's like in post-Soviet, like all of the streets are called for Lenin, like or like Marx, or like Pятилеткой or something like that. Like something with the Soviet Union, Zhukov, something like that. So I was like, good attempt,
There was this funny.
attempt, but no, yeah.
There was this funny linguistic thing that happened during the new interview, because the lady said that she basically speaks Russian or a mixture of Russian and Ukrainian. Now she wants to speak just Ukrainian, right? Just pure Ukrainian.
Many people, yeah.
Yeah.
Feel like that, yeah.
At some point, I was between filming. I sort of tried to, without the translator, I tried to ask her something, and I basically only used the Polish words. I basically asked a question in Polish, hoping that it would work. And she was like, "Oh, just now you spoke perfect Ukrainian." I was like, "Oh,
yeah." I mean, though it is as funny as that is, it actually is like I don't understand all obviously words in Polish, especially if people speak quite fast. It's quite difficult to to tell. But if you know Ukrainian, it's an advantage in the sense to understand, for example, Czech. Or like Polish, or like things like that. If you know Russian, then it's a bit easier to actually understand like Bulgarian, or like Southern, for example, like Serbian language. And that's closer, and I can understand like both, because I know both like Ukrainian and Russian. So I always kind of thought it funny as a teenager that Russians will like make fun of us and berate us for knowing like Ukrainian and things like that. Not only in the sense that they're just Ukrainophobic, they hate like everything Ukrainian and they despise it, obviously. But it also is quite hilarious to make fun of people who actually know like multiple languages.
Yeah, it's weird.
Because there's literally nothing in any way, shape, or form wrong with that or bad about it.
Yeah. There was this.
Have you seen Stalker shit?
I was about to ask you about Stalker.
Yeah, that's funny to me.
Unfortunately,
like this Russian streamer this
Yeah.
Russian streamer guy, I forgot what his name is. Fuck him anyway. He's like a Z kind of guy, supportive of the war. Yeah, but he was like trying to understand. He was like, having a temper tantrum, like hitting the table, like saying like, I don't understand anything. They told me I will understand like everything, and I don't understand. Like, oh, you don't say bitch. Yeah, it's a different language.
But it's interesting
but they
because
have been told that it's the
sort
same,
of
so I guess it's true.
I sort of played and I find myself understanding quite a lot of words, but still they are at the end of the day different languages. So I don't go into the interviews trying a mixture of Polish and bad Ukrainian. I just take a translator. There's it would be.
I was in Poland a while ago, last time. I think it was like actually quite a long time ago. It was pre-COVID. I'm sure of it, like quite a bit of time ago. But I was like, I actually tried to speak with people, and they didn't know English, a lot of them, and I was like, and they were like, "You're Ukrainian, like speak Ukrainian, more chances I will understand than in English."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, let's try that." I tried English, universal, but didn't really work with a lot of people. But in Czech Republic, actually, most people know English, which was pretty cool. Their English knowledge is very, very good. I don't know why exactly, but literally every like young person, like below like 40 years old, knows English almost perfectly. So that was pretty cool. At least in Prague, maybe not that, but in Prague it was pretty fun.
In Poland, there's been this interesting.
I love Prague. It's my favorite place.
Oh, there's been this interesting linguistic thing. Like my mom speaks Russian. My father probably spoke Russian. All of their friends speak Russian. There's this guy that's helping me to get my article published, the one on Save Ukraine. We were trying to get me published somewhere for what I wrote about the rescued children to actually be, for people to actually be able to read it anywhere. And he says, "Oh yeah, I just speak Russian." And it's really interesting that before 1989, my parents' generation still sort of everybody spoke Russian. And when 1989 hit and Poland was basically free of the Soviet bloc, suddenly nobody knows Russian. Suddenly nobody wants to learn it. And suddenly more people speak English. Yeah.
Lucky you being free. Yeah, we only could hope, But yeah, it's just, it's kind of you had to, like, if you wanted, like, some sort of, like, in Poland, it wasn't as bad in terms of Russification as it was in Ukraine, for example, right? But, or like any other closer, I guess you could say, to Russia, like Belarus is probably the worst example of the...
It's a pretty tragic example. Belarus.
Yeah, but point is that you kind of have to. For example, when my father came to Kharkiv, right, as a young guy to study physics in Kharkiv, you had to. So the education was in Russian, right? And to be any sort mandatory. Of like to have any sort of respect, you have to speak Russian. Yeah, you have to get a job. You had to speak Russian, so you couldn't really, do much anything else. He actually like spoke Turkish, interestingly enough, as his main language, because they were Greeks that have been Turkified, quote unquote. They escaped Turks, occupation of Turkey and the war, and they have been part of the Greeks that have been essentially like Turkified. So they didn't even know Greek much, but they knew Turkish and spoke Turkish home, which is quite, sad, I guess, in a way. But that's how it is. And then my father spoke Russian with a big ass accent as well. So that was basically it. Mom also didn't learn Ukrainian because she grew up in Georgia, and her father was Russian, and her mom was Greek.
No.
So she basically just knew Russian and a bit of Georgian, and that's it, pretty much.
Things that are happening in Georgia right now. It's Georgian dream. What a dream.
Yeah. What a fucking dream. I always call them Russian dream. It's a slip of tongue.
But
that is appropriate.
There's this great book that written by a Polish journalist. It's from 2014. It was written as Maidan was happening. It's basically starts at the end of 2013, and it just recount day by day as things were happening. It's a very interesting book. This book sort of says that the people from Old Solidarity, I think Polish people were among the first that went to talk about, sort of report on the Maidan from foreigners. That old
Might be. I
people,
don't really remember at this point, to be honest, but I
yeah,
remember there were foreign journalists, a couple, and I do remember them being a couple from Poland, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, no, that
So
people from
it's
the
been a while
old
though.
people from the old Solidarity sort of went to Ukraine to talk about Maidan because they felt like this, well, solidarity, because they
Yeah,
felt like
I guess.
Maidan was like the solidarity movement. You know, the older generation with the younger generation sort of opposing the government together. They felt a strong sense
Mm,
of kinship with the movement. And there's at the beginning of the book, there are sort of testimonies from people that describe what they felt before, right before the Maidan, sort of like people that were in their 40s, 30s. There was a taxi driver that said, "Yeah, I'm a taxi driver now, but I used to sell ice cream. And one day I would just do my business. The militia would come, they would observe us all day. And then by the end of the day, they would come to me and say, Hey, we counted the amount of customers. We saw how much ice cream you sold.
true.
The amount is this and
Yeah.
this. We counted 30 days, that's a month. We divided by half. This is how much you have to give us, or else
Yeah.
we're
That was
gonna,
the reality.
yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
make sure that some control will come, some other stuff will come, and you better pay us." And the
Yeah.
taxi driver
That's
was
how
like,
business works
"Yeah,
in Ukraine. It was like basically just extortion endlessly,
yeah,
and that's something I bring up like to people, to hilarious Westerners who talk about like Ukrainian corruption endlessly, but they just have no idea how big of it, or they know and they do it purposefully, also possible as a propaganda. But the difference between how things were when I was a kid and how things are now as I'm 30, uh, it's just. It's just two different countries,
yeah,
like in the terms of how like things function, how fucking awful it was. Like it was absolutely normal, just so you know. With my father, for example, he would drive me around in a car like somewhere, right, as a as
yeah,
a kid, and he would just drive and he would give money like this to
yeah."
police people.
And it's like,
Like it was just an absolutely normal thing.
yeah,
Yes.
but it's like, there are a couple of more examples, of course, like the taxi driver, which is a pretty important part of the story. The taxi driver was sort of like seething with anger. Like, I'm just waiting for the order. I'm just waiting for the order to like attack the government. We just go after those bastards.
Mm.
And there was the other person who was like, my mom got sick. She had to go to a hospital. Her leg was so swollen that it was like your two arms. And they told us, well, yeah, we'll help your mom. It's just that it's going to cost you $1,000 per day or something, or some crazy
Mm.
amount that
Yeah, it was
was like,
absolutely horrible, and people. It wasn't really, as a participant, right? It wasn't really. Now I understand the bigger picture, I guess you could say, but in the biggest pictures, let's say,
yeah,
and it was really about that. So it was like about the corruption,
yeah,
about the abuse of power, about the tyrannical, government,
yeah,
about the all of that, about us wanting a better life. Essentially,
yeah,
we wanted laws to work. We wanted, some sort of like order, I guess, in this fucking chaos of like extortion and corruption, right?
yeah,
And only then, later on, we really understood that that was a battle, actually, also for the Ukrainian nation against Russian
yeah.
imperialism and Russian expansionism, right? All of that. It was like kind of like the afterthought.
It
It wasn't
was,
like why everyone went
it
there,
is,
or yeah,
it is
yeah, it
tied.
was.
It was tied because it was in Russia's interest for things to remain like that.
Yes, but I didn't really know that. Like
Yeah,
when I started going there, like we didn't speak about Russia much. So
yeah,
if you like listen to people on the stage, right, talking like to each other, all what was happening on Maidan, right? Most people didn't really speak about Russia at all. It was them who was talking about this endlessly on their like television and
yeah,
state media and everything. But we didn't really. Mostly people just spoke about what was actually here, right? About our own, government, about our own like situation. It was later that we like understood when Russia started like supporting Yanukovych, when they started sending their own like troops to help, all of that, not troops, but National Guard, like Berkut people, all of that, red snipers, all of that shit, right? So all of that started happening. It was understood that they are not going to let us go. It's a bigger picture. It's about their coercion and their desire to keep us in their sphere.
It's about extraction of sort of because that's what Russia sort of still depends on, extraction of goods from. But
I mean, you do it like that, kind of. You like make threats, essentially, blackmail, right? As they blackmailed us when we wanted to join European Union, and they were like, "We will up the price of gas like so much for you that you will not be able to sustain like."
Or even stop providing the gas altogether.
Oh yeah, altogether, yeah. So all of that because and they were the ones who established that dependency.
Yeah.
And then they started threatening us because of that dependency. So you kind of like have to endure this sort of blackmail and sort of be, I always say this, but people like in the world seem to be expecting us to forever be their hostages. Because and this is like not something that people in Georgia or Ukraine want. And it's, it's quite visible in Moldova, in Romania, like everywhere they're meddling and trying to maintain that sort of control, right? It has to end. It has to end.
Yeah,
is what I'm saying. Yeah,
that's just to end. And like this, there's the part of talking about corruption. I feel people don't really get is how much people were fed up with the corruption and how people saw the European Union as a possible way of ending it. That European Union is this organization that sort of will force the government and the structures that are to sort of change things. Like Poland had to change things about its corruption when they wanted to join the European Union, and a lot of different things. And there was hope because, like that ex-general Piers Morgan said, Poland and Ukraine were pretty similar with their economies. And then Poland went to the European Union, of course.
Yeah, propelled itself.
Yeah.
to much better living conditions compared to us. Yeah, the difference is.
I watched an early 90s TV show, like news program, a Polish news program. And that's the funny part about NATO. When Poland was still signing, I think it was not even joining, but becoming associates with the European Union. And Polish politicians were like, so it goes without saying that if we are to join the European Union, we're also going to join NATO, right? It's a package deal, right? We're going to get both, right?
I mean, I actually appreciate I appreciate Clark in general when he appeared, obviously, right? But I especially appreciate his, there's like this it's silly to say, but I nearly fucking teared up because I know it sounds stupid, but it's just so rare to hear like a Westerner speak with such respect to the agency of the people in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
So it's such a rarity that every time I hear it, I'm like borderline on the verge of fucking tears. And I'm not really even ashamed. It's actually them who should be ashamed, in my opinion, because it's such a rarity that when you hear it, you're like, oh my God, that person actually recognizes I'm a fucking human being. And people in my country are human beings with with their own will, with their own opinion, with their own beliefs, with their own like idea of how they want their country to be. So not only he spit straight facts, as Americans say, but he also was just so respectful. Like as someone who actually like understands and have been there and heard what people say, right? And it was like, I was though very relieved when he appeared, because when I appeared, I thought it was supposed to be like 2 versus 2. Mm-hmm. So that's what I kind of thought, it makes sense, right? For people, 2 versus 2. But then I was just, at the beginning, I was just trying to figure out who amongst those people is supposed to be on my fucking side.
Scott, obviously. Scott.
Not Horton, obviously, right? But not Cheng. And I didn't know much about that other guy, Rob, I think was his name, the other person. And I was like, is it supposed to be this guy? And apparently not. Apparently it was just me against basically the 3 of them, which was kind of funny because I expected Cheng to be like shitty, but he was like the least shitty out of the 3 of them. yeah. So it was like very funny. Not to praise him or anything, but it's just comparatively he was like much better. At least he acknowledged the abduction of the children. He acknowledged that getting away with it will lead Putin to potentially attack other countries, and at least there was some sort of like sense in what he was saying. But the other two, it was like a straight up dumpster fire.
Yes, what was the worst?
Yeah.
I have to say. Like I even started. I
Yeah.
reacted to it on stream, and I started joking at some point that there's so many better ways that you can spend time than reading that book from that guy Scott. You can go to the lake and start throwing rocks into the water. You can pick your nose. You can there's literally endless possibilities that we can do. It's just
Yes.
there's this saying that it's good to know opinions. Even if you disagree with them, to get to know opinions of those who you disagree with. But come on, 700 pages of nonsense. I'm no, I don't. Life's too short,
I like how he used this, like, I don't know, like if you know, but there's this trick that some people recently, especially, used to appear smart. You essentially like place a book behind you, and like half of those books are your books, like the ones you read. You like quote yourself essentially as a source.
Yeah.
It's a very strong thing they do sometimes. I noticed. Like half of that shelf was his book.
Like
I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yeah. Recently, I've been shocked with this argument from people because there's still people that argue about Euromaidan to this day, and argue with me about it, and then the argument goes like this: listen, Yanukovych was illegally deposed because there is an impeachment process in Ukraine and it needs a supermajority. But instead of doing the impeachment process, because they would not have enough votes in the Rada, they did a process of just voting whether or not he should go. And that needed a lesser amount of votes. So they sort of bypassed the law by not doing the impeachment process. But okay, let's play out the situation in which the impeachment process would have been done. Let's say the impeachment fails. What now? Yanukovych is abroad, right? The country is just in paralysis. So what the hell is supposed to do? Is that the desired outcome? A country in paralysis? Like, after all, people don't remember. People don't remember this about Euromaidan, but there was, at the height of violence, there was a visit from 3 prime ministers of Europe. One of them was Polish, right? And there was a long discussion with Yanukovych. He was like, yeah, you better come up with some deal. And he did agree to a deal. The deal was, I'm going to organize early elections. And then famously or infamously, Sikorski, the prime minister of Poland, went to the protesters and said, you better agree to this deal as well, because otherwise we'll just get shot. And this has been misrepresented to hell and back. The context of this whole thing is that in the 80s, the Solidarity movement sort of underestimated the Polish government, and the Polish government enacted martial law and started just arresting everybody. My father was arrested on the first day of that. And he was basically what he was basically saying: if you don't agree to this deal that is being proposed right now, then he might just do martial law. But in this case, it's going to be worse. Instead of arresting you, he's just going to start shooting you, right? And the thing is, people, from what I understand, did agree to this deal. There was an agreement between Yanukovych and the protesters that you're going to organize early elections. You're going to step down. You're going to organize elections. We're going to have elections. And right after agreeing to that, he fled. So...
Yeah, the demand was for him to essentially stand down, essentially.
And organize early elections.
But it didn't work out that way. And at that point, honestly, after everything they have put us through, most people like didn't give a fuck like exactly how he's going to live. If
Yeah.
I'm honest, so most people just wanted him to live, and that was it essentially.
Yeah. So
And of course, in this sort of like absolute chaos, you needed some sort of like temporarily government before the proper elections can take place, and that's exactly what happened.
That is what happened. Yeah.
So that's.
This what was supposed to be the alternative. Let's say the impeachment thing would fail because there would be not enough votes, right? So we have a president, quote unquote, that's abroad, that fled, that will not keep his one promise that he sort of already made. There's already an agreement. That the population hates.
Revolution brewing.
And there's already a deal that he'll just organize. The only job that he has left as president is to organize the early elections and leave. But he won't. He's abroad. Technically speaking, still a president. So it's just a country in paralysis. This is just...
that's stupid. That all of it is incredibly stupid, and it's quite annoying to hear in the glorious year of almost 25. The exact same Russian bullshit regenerated and digested to spit it out in English to the population, to the public of such, on Pierce, for example, there is a big audience, right? And you're just, thankfully, he at least invited like General Clark to represent the opposition, which, that's better than just letting people like Horton to spew shit. But then again, if I wasn't there, who... out of these three would have interjected? Think about
it like this, right? Think about it like this. By doing this, Piers Morgan has already proved himself to be far better than Hassan Piker.
Yeah, that's true. Unironically, like I'm not there you can have like all sorts of like things about Piers. For example, his Trump thing, annoys the fuck out of me. But other than that, obviously, not only did he invite actually the opposition in the face of General Clark, but he also invited a Ukrainian, which is sensational.
It's incredible.
So that's like it's quite a big burden that's me as well, because out of all people, I think there are like better people to speak with like some sort of authority on the matter.
Who would you elect?
At least I was there.
Who would you elect to speak?
There are like people like who are in the army, people who are example like people like Starsky, for example, people like that who are in the both like in the position of the authority and Ukrainian. Like there are plenty of people who can journalists who have been, but I mean they invited me, so I'm not complaining obviously, because I was quite nervous. It was like it's a big audience, it's like a fucking debate thingy, and I'm like not really my sort of like forte, so to speak. But then again, I thought like if I say no, then I will lose an opportunity to speak to a bigger audience and represent Ukraine. So I decided to go there. I was nervous at first, but then when that motherfucker like Horton started speaking, I was like, all the nerves ended, all the anxiety ended. I was just like mad as fuck, and I was just going for it, so to speak. I wasn't really afraid anymore.
All the hits, all the slogans, all the Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, I've got some.
Not to be rude at first, but because it was like sort of cordial in a way, because nobody was like interrupting too much. But then I realized that if I don't like ask Piers to intervene and that motherfucker to shut up, he will just not let me talk.
Yeah.
So after this whole like tirade, he will try to basically silence me and not let me say anything. Yeah. Because as soon as I started talking, he started interrupting me and talking with me over me. And I was like, man, I gotta do something. I gotta appeal to the moderator to make him shut the fuck up. It worked. So that's
but it was really wild with the moment I start speaking facts, I started speaking my facts. You just say it's Russian propaganda. Well, I'm sorry, it's Russian propaganda. I'm sorry, you are just repeating Russian talking points. Like, well, your facts are.
I told him like, if you don't want to be like accused of Russian propaganda, then stop doing it in English. Maybe that's like
I don't even like Russia. I'm an American.
Genius argument. Yeah. The funniest bit was when he was like, he's like so smug as well. He's like, I will. He was like, you're not addressing anything. I would if you let me address it. And he was like, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
And then I'm addressing like, most of things he said. I couldn't address everything because it was so much. It was like
Yeah.
a speed run of Russian Today propaganda. But I
Hmm.
addressed quite a bit. And also then Clark appeared, and then he proceeded by the end of the debate say that all we said was he said Russian propaganda.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that we didn't just say you're saying Russian propaganda, we actually really addressed like most of the points he brought up.
And he
But
started
yeah,
rolling his eyes performatively.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
all
to be
the.
fair to him, I did roll my eyes at him like at least 50 times, so it's not like he was the only one
And you
doing it.
did not do it like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, without the motion, I suppose. Yes, that's true. But I do have a face that is, how to say this? It's quite difficult to hide what I'm thinking on it. So even I tried my best to stay neutral, like as far as I can. But I also have like a pretty, my face is really not good at hiding shit at all.
Yeah,
So yeah, most of things I think pop up on it.
I
So
feel
it's
that.
just yeah.
It's
Anyhow,
just. It's just.
I think I did relatively all right.
It's very frustrating when people start talking about the US and Russia as in there were those chess players. And I guess all the countries in between are just pieces to be moved around without any agency, without any goals, aspirations, fears, anything. It's
Yeah,
just.
yeah, it's like this Mersheimer, or how the fuck you pronounce his name, shit, which I sent you that he liked his book,
Oh, God,
which is
yeah.
very, very funny if you think about it.
The
One thing though, I
offensive
will have to go
realist.
soon because
Mhm. I got
yeah,
bad
because I
news
have
to
to
share.
drop on my.
I got bad news to share.
Oh,
Sad
which bad
news.
news?
This laptop is too weak to play Stalker 2 on stream in
Oh,
Ukraine. Yeah.
I cannot play. I feel you
It's
because I
like,
only play on my PlayStation, and I
yeah.
don't have a computer strong enough to play a game. I just play. Yeah, so it's same. I also cannot play it.
So, like,
Yeah.
I have to go
Well,
back
anyhow,
to
I gotta go
Poland.
because
Yeah. But I can play Stalker 1.
at least you can play there.
I can play Stalker 1. Always.
Oh yeah, with all graphics.
Yeah, it actually
I
looks
gotta
pretty
go
good.
because Rick,
Mhm.
my friend from Kiev, is
Yeah.
waiting for me. So
I
yeah,
know.
so I
I know
can
Rick, the
gotta
Ukrainian.
catch up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
Oh yeah, he's a friend though. So yeah, nice chatting up with you as always. And it's been a while, and I again appreciate your work a lot in the terms of like being, helping us with this whole children abduction situation.
Yeah, I hope
It's
to.
very cool. That
Oh,
you're
maybe
doing
during
it.
Christmas. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll come volunteer in the Hell's Kitchen. It's in Kharkiv.
Oh yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Maybe I'll come during the
I
near
mean,
Christmassy
I
time.
think we could like maybe like I go to Kiev at some point and we can meet up since you're like
Yeah,
a Kiev resident partially
yeah.
now. Yeah, so I think and we can do it. So yeah, chat to you sometime. I hope.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
have a nice day. No phones, no bombs, hopefully.
Yeah,
And
no,
yeah,
we're
bye bye.
usually drones. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye.
Over here, that was yeah. Even though the internet that did not always perform the best, it's like I think it went well, right? What do everybody think? I could not really article Sonar free site chat video laptop camera. I'm back. How is everybody? Let's see the chat. F. Oh, what happened? Did we catch the end of the conversation with Anastasia, or did it sadly not happen? And if there are any new viewers, welcome. I do history, I do politics, I do video games, and I have this page. So welcome. My stream kept lagging. The internet in the apartment is not the best. Maybe if I were to be streaming with an Ethernet cable, I don't have an Ethernet cable. I don't even know if this laptop has an Ethernet cable thing. So it's a problem that I will have. I'm gonna go tomorrow and buy an Ethernet cable. That's a thing that I'm going to do. It's a bit of a problem. A slight lag near the tail end, but it was nice. Discussion of what I was able to catch. The Russians are trying to silence the stream, always. Yeah, there was some lagging at the beginning as well. We could not hear each other well. We talked about a few topics. I think we covered a bunch of topics. We talked about Piers Morgan. We talked about Euromaidan. We talked about the Holodomor. We caught up. We caught up. First ever conversation we had when I met Ukraine. The before ones were happening when I was in. So welcome. Welcome to the Lucy Haze experience. So I guess this is a Sunday thing. So we should probably... Should I make a poll for all the people that are here? Also, if there are any new viewers, then welcome, and I hope you stay. I hope you keep coming back. Maybe there will be like in Kiev. Yeah, hopefully. I'm gonna have to... I'm gonna need to gather some war funds if I need to. Also, I will have to come back to Poland to restock on hormones. I'm starting to... Yes, I'm the biggest Polish trans streamer. Politics or game? Politics. Game. I wonder what people want on this fine Sunday. Hello, Mikola. Hello, Mikola. I can read. Definitely, I can read. Which I think I've proven right now. How was the talk? Did you enjoy? I'm having an interview. Oh gosh, I forgot to talk about that actually. I have an interview on Tuesday. The first interview with a rescued child. The game is either Fallout New Vegas, and you can tell me which title you prefer. We can play Fallout New Vegas. We can... Okay. Right. Okay. Right. I just said it, and where is Anna? The conversation ended. She had to go to wreck the Ukrainian. Our conversation ended, Mikola. We spoke, Mikola. We spoke for about an hour. Yeah, we spoke for about an hour. Our conversation lasted. She had to go because she has an appearance on Rick the Ukrainian now. I only caught the end, so I will watch later to catch the segment. Probably fake Alec Cole Parker is gonna take care of changing this into a workable segment with a nice thumbnail. Hopefully, maybe some people have decided that Lucy Haze is worth subscribing to. Hold on. Hassan has said something really silly, apparently, again. Oh, 67. 67 views. Yes. Let's see. Did I start the poll? Or no? Have I started the poll? Politics. You want politics? Okay, we might as well. Oh God, I forgot to talk to Anna about Assad. About Assad being... Oh my gosh. You need the biggest Polish trans hormones. Well, I've got this. I've got these. And I've got these blockers. Those are the two types I'm taking. I could get shots, but they're difficult to get in Poland if I have to get them from the Czech Republic, which is a bit of a pain. The internet is not stable tonight. The internet's just not what it should be. Because it might be difficult to... Yeah, it's all not working well. I've hit a bit of... One moment, I'll go to the toilet, okay? We'll be right back. People are talking about the Holodomor in the Discord. One moment, okay? I'll be right back. I'm gonna mute.